Good morning. We are back today talking more about our venue ownership journey. Now, I have to warn you, it's a little bit of a longer one today because I'm going to talk about the process and how we actually built this mamma jamma over here. And it's a roller coaster of a story. As we all know, venue ownership is just one large roller coaster. So buckle up. Okay, so we decided that we were ready to move forward. And the first step was to find a piece of land. And I remember we looked around for a lot of different places and we landed on this really small parcel of land down kind of near where we wanted it to be. And it had been on the market for like 3 years. So it was like, at the time, it felt like a lot of money. But when I look back on it, it was literally a steal. And so we're like, this is it. This is the spot. It was in heavy industrial, so we felt like we weren't gonna have issues with neighbors. And our real estate agent said, look, you can do this, but you're gonna have to rezone it because it's zoned residential and it needs to be zoned something different. And she's like, I suggest let's set up a meeting with the county. So she set up a meeting with the county, and me and Courtney expected to walk into this meeting with our real estate agent and just someone from the planning department. That's not what happened. We walk into this room and there was like 15 people there. And it is every aspect of the county. Someone representing an aspect of the county is sitting there. So like environmental, tourism, the sheriff's department, the appearance commission, like all of these people are sitting here. And we were wholly unprepared, but we had submitted these plans and everyone had an opinion. They wanted to tell us all the things, ask all the questions, make sure that we knew all the stuff. And so there was a lot of things that we were like, oh yeah, we're gonna do that. And they're like, well, if you do that, did you know X, Y, Z? We're like, okay, well, we're not gonna do that, right? Like, we're gonna change our mind here. So we walk out of that meeting, I'm like sweating because I'm thinking like, oh my God, like, I don't know if this is possible. And I've kind of married myself to this idea at this point. And my real estate agent was like, look guys, like that seems scary, but it's fun. That's the hardest thing you're gonna have to do. She's like, just fill out the paperwork. It's a lot of paperwork. And she's like, you're going to do that. You're gonna have to go in front of the county. They have like town meetings or whatnot, and it's gonna be about 6 months, a 6-month process. She said, I'll talk to the buyer or the seller and ask if we can have a 6-month due diligence. And surprisingly, the person said yes, because I think she was just trying to get rid of the land. We filled out all the paperwork. We go to all the town meetings. It was our very last town meeting that we're supposed to go to, and we had complied all along. We'd been to the appearance commission, which they tell you like what certain kind of trees they like and don't like. I mean, it's insane. And I go into labor the morning that we are supposed to go in front of the county. And I remember telling Sam, like, this can't happen today. Like, this baby's not coming today. Like, I have to go stand in front of the county and tell people I'm gonna follow the rules and get that final approval so we can like start this process. And he's like, well, I don't really think you can control when that baby's coming. And he was correct, I could not. So we called my real estate agent. We're like, hey, like, we're gonna need you to stand in for us and like, you know, say we're gonna follow the rules. And I get the call at that time. I think he was born at like 4 p.m. and I get the call at like 6 p.m. that we were approved. And which is just crazy when you think about it. Like, I had just given birth and like, hey, now start this like crazy adventure and build a venue. So we had approval, and our next big hurdle was septic. Now, in that initial planning meeting, the environmental person said, look, I know you think this is just a 4-bedroom house with a commercial place, but because it's commercial, it's gonna have to perk for a 24-bedroom space. And he's like, and I'm just gonna tell you right now, like, you're not gonna find that in Chatham County. Like, we do not have soils that do that. And I don't know, there was something about it. Like, I think it's the way he said it to me. I was like, well, it's gonna happen. Like, I have control over the soils of the land. But we went through, I was like, let's just go through the zoning at this point. Because at this point, I wasn't even confident we were gonna get permitted. So like, I'm not gonna pay money to have all this septic stuff done. When it's technically like there's a very small fee for getting to see if you can get permitted. So we go through the process, we get the rezoning, we get the permit, all that. And now we're like literally crossing our fingers, saying all the prayers that this soil is gonna perk. And the guy comes back and he looks at me and he goes, you've literally just struck Chatham County gold. The land perks. So then it was game on. We had, in this process, we had bartered for architectural drawings. So the architect that we were looking at, his daughter was getting married, and so we planned her wedding and he did the architectural drawings for us in exchange, which is crazy when you think about it. But we started construction, and it was about almost over a full year of construction. It was a really hard year, to be truthful with you. So the plan was that we had a conventional mortgage. I was going to build the house, and we were going to kind of siphon some of that money to start building the ballroom. But ultimately, this business loan that this bank had promised us was going to come through, that was going to finish the commercial side of the property. At the time, we had all sold our houses. We were living in rentals. We were building the 2 small cottages that are also on property where we were going to eventually move into. I joked that we built a cul-de-sac in a year because that's literally what it feels like. But there was a lot going on. And obviously having a newborn, all the things, like it was just a lot. So we start the process, and we run out of money halfway through. And this is around the time the bank loan was supposed to come through. So our bank person came on property one day. She's like, I want to see the progress. And so I was like, yeah, come out. And I give her this tour, and I'm so excited because I'm like, okay, like we're going to get this bank loan, and like all the stress is going to be gone. And we're standing out on the terrace, and she looks at me and she's like, we're not going to loan you the money. And I actually don't remember like if I like cried in that moment or what I did, but I just remember thinking like, there's no way we can finish this. To get to that point, we had already like financially strapped ourselves. And so we pulled together and we said, look, we can use this equity line of credit we have on one of the cottages. We can max out credit cards. We're just going to do a lot of work ourselves. And that's exactly what we did. And when I tell you those 6 months were like some of the hardest 6 months of my life, like I can jokingly talk about it, but like it was one of the hardest 6 months of my life. I mean, there were weeks where we didn't know how we were going to buy groceries. Like we didn't know how we were going to feed our children. And luckily we had great in-laws who recognized how much we weren't eating and how much we were working and dropped off food for us. But like, it was very, very stressful. And it felt like you were on this conveyor belt that you couldn't get off. Like how could you stop? Like you were 3/4 of the way done. You had clients booked at this point. You had to finish it. Like there was no other option. But at the same time, like money doesn't grow on trees. You can't just find it. So it was just this feeling of failure all the time, every single day. Like we just weren't going to make it. Well, we did make it, obviously, and had our first events here. We had one event we don't actually really talk about, and I'm not going to talk about it today, but it was our very first event. We were wholly unprepared for it. And I think it was our first taste of like recognizing, okay, like we need to do this better. Like we need to be better at this whole concept. This isn't just providing a space. This is so much more than that. And so luckily we had a little bit of a break between that event and our next big string of events in the fall. And when the fall came, we really started like, I think we had like 15 weddings booked that fall. And then we had 35 booked for the next year. And we felt like, okay, like this is good. We're doing great. Like we're finding our footing here. Like we, have a name in the market, and we just started rocking and rolling. Now the events were going fine, but because we had leveraged everything that we owned, every single credit card, we were drowning in debt. Like we were barely paying the bills. And I remember looking at my husband saying like, 1, this is not financial security that I promised you, but 2, like, I don't know how we're gonna get out of this. Like we can't, like there was just no way to get out of it based on what was happening, right? Like, because when you open a venue, you think, okay, well, I opened it and that's my overhead. Well, you don't think about all the other things, like how you have to upfit this. I mean, the cost of toilet paper and paper towels. I mean, the amount of paper towels people go through is absolutely insane. So there were just so many things we hadn't really accounted for that were constantly coming out of the bottom line. And I just remember thinking like, I don't know if we're gonna make it through this year. And so we were home for Thanksgiving in Florida that year, and I get a call. And it was a bank. And he said, hey, I see you're an LLC, and a newly formed LLC because we just formed one for the Bradford. And do you need a bank? And I was like, you know what? I do need a bank because I don't like the bank that did not give me the money after they promised me a loan for over a year. And he's like, great, so come in, we'll chat. So I go in, it's First Citizens Bank, by the way, because I will I'll fangirl over them for the rest of my life. And I told him our story, like exactly where we were, how far in debt we were, all the things. And he said, well, do you have a business plan? And I showed it to him, and he's like, well, do you have events booked? And I showed him the events booked, and I was like, look, based on these events, like we can pay the mortgage if this is what the mortgage is, if we wrap up all this debt. And he's like, well, do you have an appraisal on the house? And I said, yeah, like we are there's so much equity in it, like an insane amount of equity in it. Like that literally could be the down payment. And he said, well, let me introduce you to Lisa. And then Lisa, my knight in shining armor, came around and said, yeah, totally. Like, we can approve this. Let's do it. And within 3 months, we had all of our debt wrapped up into our mortgage, and we were finally able to breathe again. And from there, it just really felt like things blew up. I mean, we were still planning weddings. We still have our planning company. So that was just flourishing. We were doing, over 100 events a year. The Bradford was just excelling. We were starting to add teammates, and it just felt like, okay, like, this is it. Like, we're here. We've made it. And I tell you all of that to say that it wasn't like a 1-year process, but like we just opened up our doors and everything was perfect. It took a couple years to really figure it out, to figure out how to run it, and how to run it as a small operation. Because for the first 2 years, our goal was 35, 40 weddings. We did a lot of double Friday, Saturdays, because we were a bed and breakfast, and that was our goal. And once we realized, okay, like, that works, but that's not hitting the profit margins we need to hit, then we needed to take a look at, okay, like, how can we restructure this? And we realized we needed to book more events, which means we had to build our team. And that is a time period that I call our messy middle. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But I tell you all of these things in their process because I think that sometimes when you look at stories of people and hear they opened a venue, you make a lot of assumptions of how they got there. That it was a family-owned house, or that they had a venture capitalist investing in it, or whatever. And really, I think everyone's story is super unique, and no one's is harder than the others. So I think opening a venue is hard no matter what path you took. But what saved us, and I think when I talk to other venues, what saves them all the time is the people that they surround themselves with. And when I think back on the process of losing that loan, it was the best thing that ever happened to us. It was absolutely the best thing that ever happened to us, because if we had gotten that loan, we would have built 2 of the same very dysfunctional ballrooms. If we'd gotten that loan, I wouldn't have found this banking partner that got us through COVID. We would have not survived without that bank through COVID. And so there's all of these things that I feel like happen for a reason. And there's all these partners that come alongside you and really help you fulfill your dream. And I feel like that, to me, is where I feel the most passionate about, because there were vendors that believed in us and helped us get to where we're going to go. There were partners that stood beside us and helped us get the Bradford off the ground. And that's exactly what I want the masterclass to be, is a place where we are a community, we come together and really encourage one another and help one another and be those partners, because we all know that you can't do venue ownership by yourself. You just can't, right? I mean, you can, it's just a lot harder. And so, yeah, that's why I want to tell a story today, to talk a little bit about our process and how our community got us through it, how a little bit of luck, and a lot of perseverance got us to where we are today. So stay tuned tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about the messy middle, how we knew it was time to start hiring a team, a lot of failures we had on that end, and how we finally found our dream team that we have today.